Bonjour et bienvenue. This is our YouTube live event for SYA France. Thank you so much for being here.
My name is Shauna Campbell, and I am the Admissions Marketing Manager here at SYA.
And I am Avery Steele. I work in the admissions office, and I'm also an alum of SYA France.
So before we get started, I just want to point out the chat box feature that you can find on the right-hand side of your screen. If you haven't done so already, feel free to introduce yourself. So if you're a parent watching, feel free to type your name along with your student's name. And if you're a student, type your name and where you go to school. So now is the time to also bring up our Q&A session which will happen at the last 10 to 15 minutes of this broadcast. So towards the end, we'll turn it over to our viewers to ask questions to our special guests. And speaking of special guests, it's time to introduce them, who are joining us live from Rennes, France. We have our resident director, Mina, Qadir, and two students. Would you each like to introduce yourself and tell our viewers your name, where you go to school, your grade, and where you're from?
My name is Isabel Wilkins. I'm a sophomore, and I go to the Lawrenceville School in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, and I'm from Winchester, Virginia.
My name's Kate Gilman. I go to the Lawrenceville School as well, and I'm a junior, and I live in Tewksbury, New Jersey.
And Mina, can you tell us a little bit about SYA France and what makes it so special?
Sure. So I'm Mina Qadir. I'm the resident director here at SYA France in Rennes. Just a few words maybe about some aspects of the program. Maybe the first one, the core of the program is really the French language study. Kids here take 6 classes, 4 in the target language and 2 classes in English. American Lit is taught in English, and the math course is also taught in English. There are many aspects of the program. I'll maybe talk first about the extracurricular activities that are offered at the local level in arts, music, and sports, which allow our students to meet young French people their age. As part of the activities we offer here, we also have service learning hours offered at local elementary schools and retirement homes. Maybe another very important aspect of our program is the homestay. Students become a part of a new family, different culture, develop informal day-to-day French language skills, and create bonds with their host families that usually last a lifetime. Actually, our current English teacher, Heather Liskey, is here after 27 years. She used to be a student here at SYA France, returning here as a teacher, and met her host family again this year. I'll touch maybe on the last part of the program, maybe the most important to them, the travels to all parts of France during the year. We travel twice in the fall. We first go to the heart of Bretagne, the region that Rennes part is Bretagne. We go to the Loire Valley. In about 10 days, we'll be in Paris for 5 days. Students also go to the south of France in April for a week. And we take a last trip in May to Normandy. Speaking about travel, another important aspect of the program to them is the independent travel. So students can travel independently with friends starting November, usually and all throughout the year until May.
Great, thanks so much for that great recap. Now I want to start asking students some questions. Why did you guys decide to apply to SYA?
For me, I really do like my school, my home school in the US, but I was kind of looking for something different just to switch it up because I guess the day-to-day life of going to school every day, the same thing for year after year, it gets a little boring. And so I really wanted to take the step and do something that I've never done before that really pushed my boundaries and pushed me to challenge myself to do something that's a big risk, but I knew would be really rewarding for me. So I thought, and I also was really interested in language, and I love the French language. So I thought SYA France would be a great option, and I'm so glad I applied because I'm so happy here now.
And Kate, what about you?
Yeah, I have a few of the similar reasons just because I think I didn't want to go to the same school for all 4 years of high school. And when Avery actually came into our school and talked about SYA France, I knew that I really wanted to do it. And I just started taking French at the beginning of high school, and I love the language so much. And yeah.
Great. So you guys have been there for a little over a semester. So what's your favorite part about studying abroad in France so far?
For me, my favorite part of being in Rennes is my host family, because they've been so supportive and they're so great, and they made it so easy for me to transition into my new life here in France. And I think they're just a really important part, and they've really made the experience as great as it could be.
For me, I think that activities are one of the things that really made this place feel like home, just because I've always loved sports and everything, but we started playing hockey here and we play badminton as well. And it's so nice to be able to be a part of this community and just kind of be on the team with French kids. And it just makes it feel like home.
So let's talk a little bit about host family, since Isabel already brought that up. Can both of you talk a little bit more about your host family? Maybe tell us who's in your host family, what you do with them, and how maybe they're similar or different to your family back home.
I have actually 7 host brothers and sisters, but only 4 of them live at home. So I have 2 host brothers that live at home and 2 host sisters. And they're all just amazing. They really welcomed me into the home, and they were so open with me and made me feel so welcome. And I'm really close with my host sister, so that's been really great. And we live right in the center of Rennes, which is perfect for me because I've never lived in the city before, so it's a new experience, just like this whole year is. And so with my host family, on weekends and really every night, well, because in France it's very important to have meals with your family and spend a lot of time together, which is something that's been very different for me than in the US. And so we always gather for meals, and they talk about their day and ask me about my day. And one of the things that's been really great about living with a host family is not only speaking with them, but just listening to their conversations. So even though from the beginning, I couldn't quite understand everything they said, obviously, because I was just learning the language, but they'll talk about politics, and it's been really interesting to hear their view on things in America as opposed to France. And so that's certainly helped me with my language skills. And we always spend time watching TV together and playing games and all that kind of stuff. So it's been really great with them.
So for me, I actually have a similar situation with my family. I have 7 host siblings as well. And 4 of them live at home, except one of those 4, who's my 14-year-old host brother. He goes to boarding school during the week, so he's only home on the weekends. And I love my family so much, and every Sunday we go to church together, which is really nice, and it's just like, it's a nice experience. And I have a host dog as well, which was a great thing for me, because I have 3 dogs at home, which is so nice to have a dog here. And I live right down the road from the school, which is also so convenient, and like only a 10-minute bus ride into the Centerville. And yeah, so it's a similar situation as well with dinner, and every night we eat together, and it's asking about my day and everything. And I'm closest with my 10-year-old host sister, just because she's very open and she's loving and playful. So it's really nice to be able to play cards with her and just like little things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about school. Can you guys maybe tell us your favorite class, or talk about the faculty members at SYA France?
My favorite class is I think my favorite class is either French or math, because French class here is actually very different than I expected, because in the US it's more focused on the grammar and that kind of thing, whereas here it's more about the culture in France. So it's kind of, it helps with living in a host family and that kind of thing, but also the language. And it's interesting because we learn kind of slang and those kinds of things too, which has been really great and actually helped me a lot more than just learning the grammar, which comes a lot more easily when you're surrounded by it every day. And math I love because that's just kind of my subject. It's my favorite subject, so I love that. And all the teachers here are really amazing. They understand completely that we don't come from a French background and we're just learning the language, so they're really understanding about that, but still force us, or not force, but they push us to keep speaking French and just, I guess, really immersing ourselves in it, because they know that that's what's best for us, even if that can be a very tough thing to do when you're actually here living in France and having to speak it all day outside of school as well. So they've been really supportive and helpful with that. And yeah.
For me, I really love my history class, and so it's modern history, but it's more of an architecture class. And first of all, I love my teacher. He's so great and funny, and he'll say a couple words in English, and it's so funny to hear him. And also, that class is really interesting to me just because learning about architecture of Rennes, it's really nice because we'll go on little like walks around during our class, and we'll look at the buildings themselves, and like he'll talk about them. We've done presentations ourselves in front of specific buildings around, which is just such a cool experience.
So I want to ask you guys about your French. What level were you at before you started SYA, and how comfortable are you with it now?
So before I came to SYA, I had just finished French 2, which I guess can mean different things coming from different schools, but I'd say I was not all that comfortable. I was not very comfortable, but I was more comfortable with written French than the understanding and the speaking. So when I first got here, I guess I could barely understand anything that my host family was saying and all that. But now the speaking is still coming. That's definitely been the hardest for me, but comprehension, I'd say I understand nearly everything that people tell me. Even if I don't get every word in the sentence, I can always figure out the general idea of what they're saying. And so that's been really motivating, because sometimes I feel like I'm not making any progress, and then I'll have one really good conversation with my host sister or my host mom or somebody, and I'll realize, oh my gosh, even 2 weeks or a month ago, I would not have been able to have had that conversation. And so that's been really cool for me to see, observe for myself.
Yeah, I had just come out of French 2, and I was super nervous just because that's like the minimum requirement for coming to SYA, and I was nervous that everyone would be so much better than me. And so the first day I got here, I remember just like taking it all in. I was sitting outside with my host family, and they were all speaking, and I was so nervous about it. But I think I've increased gotten a lot better after this first semester. And it's really nice for me. I kind of use my host brother as kind of a marker, because he comes back every weekend, and when we sit around the table at Sunday lunch, I just like think about how much better my conversation has gotten already after just 1 week. And it's just so nice to see just these little improvements. And like Isabel said, these strong conversations, there will just be like one strong conversation that will happen one day. And it's just such a nice feeling.
Would either of you mind demonstrating your French?
Bonjour tout le monde. J'adore la France. C'est une très bonne expérience d'être et d'habiter ici. Et je pense que ça serait une très bonne idée pour vous de faire des dossiers pour habiter ici.
Ouais, J'adore ma famille d'école et j'adore mes activités et tout le monde ici, oui.
Très bien, right? I'm not great at French. Great. So let's talk a little bit about your co-curricular activities. And I know, Mina, you've already mentioned a few, but for the students, can you talk about maybe a co-curricular activity that you participate in or maybe a friend participates in, and maybe just talk about the many activities that you have available to you in Rennes?
We actually do the same activities. So we do badminton once a week and we play ice hockey twice a week. And those have both been amazing. We hadn't played badminton before we came here, but we had a friend here who played at home before. So she kind of encouraged us, I guess you could say, to play badminton with her. And that has probably been one of the best ways for me to learn the language. And I knew that from the first day we went. As soon as I got there, I think I may have even said to my friends, oh my gosh, we're actually speaking and communicating and making new friends with real French people. And that's just such a new experience, nothing I've ever been able to do before. And so that was really amazing, I think, when we first went. And also, I do a program once a week, and I go to the l'école maternelle. It's the school it's the nursery school essentially. So it's for 3, 4, 5-year-olds, and I teach them English with one other friend, and that's been really great because they are very honest. So when they hear that we make a mistake in speaking, they're happy to correct us. So that's been really awesome.
Yeah, we actually just started ice hockey a couple weeks ago, which was so exciting for me just because I love the sport so much. You know, so exciting that I get to put a few things together that I love, French and ice hockey. And we've already been talking. There's only one other girl on the team, but we've been talking with her a lot in the locker room. It's just so nice to be in like a real situation with French people, just because sometimes I just like think, oh, my host family knows I speak English, and like they just like that's how they see me kind of. But with like these new relationships that are just, I don't know, it's just so nice. And we have friends that play soccer, and I know people take art classes if sports are your thing exactly. And yeah, there are so many options here. I know everyone's found something they love.
So let's talk a little bit about Rennes. How would you guys describe Rennes, and what are the highlights for living in Rennes?
I've never lived in a city before. I live in the country in the middle of nowhere. So it's been a very new experience for me, especially, as I said before, I live right in the center of town. So that's been really awesome. And it's such a great city, in my opinion, because it's the capital of Bretagne. So it's a fairly large city, but it's also really most of the buildings are really old, so it doesn't have the feel of New York City or something like that with huge skyscrapers and bustling streets. It's not so crowded, and I think it's really great. There's a few streets right in the center of Rennes that have a lot of shops on them, and that's one of my favorite things to do on the weekends, even if I know I'm not going to actually buy anything. I love to just go in the shops and walk around with my friends and just take in the city, because even when we have nothing to do, just walking around and looking at all the buildings and just being around other French people, it's always so great.
Yeah, for me, I love my walk to school every day, and it's like the perfect timing because the sun is just rising and you can see the pink sky. It just makes me so happy it's just such a beautiful little city. And like Isabel said, just walking around with my friends already keeps me so content, and I don't need like a real activity to do, even though there are so many things to do. And being in a city, it's so nice because there are little things like in December, there's the Christmas market, which is just this cute little market that has a Ferris wheel and just little shops set up around, and it's just so nice. And yeah, there's always so much to do.
So let's talk a little bit about travel. I know you guys travel as a class a lot, and you do some educational travel and then independent travel. Can you talk about a little bit of both these kinds of travel and what you guys done so far and what you guys are doing maybe later on this spring?
Yeah. Right in the beginning of the year, we started off the year with a few trips right in a row, which was really great, I think, because we went to the Loire Valley, visited Mont Saint Michel with our host siblings, and we walked across the bay, and that was so fun. And we also went and saw the Bretagne, the region that Rennes in, and those were all right at the beginning of the year, as I said, and they were great trips, I think, because they helped us, I guess, understand where we were and what our lives really mean in Rennes and in Bretagne. So that I think was really great. And then also right after those trips, we had a long break which was also really great because it let us get closer with our host families and just really live our lives in Rennes, where we would be for the rest of the year. And so I think those were all really great experiences. And in this spring, we have a few more trips coming up, Paris in 10 days. So excited for that. And for independent travel, I've started to plan some different ideas with my friends. We're thinking of all sorts of different places, either within France or outside of France. And I think it's just so great because even though our lives are focused in Rennes and in France as a whole, it's so interesting how it's such a contrast from the United States, where in Europe you can so easily go to so many different places that are so different but still so close together. And so even though the main point of this year is France and our lives here, it's still such a great experience to go get out of the US and see other places and visit so many different cultures, types of cities, architecture, if you're interested in that. And it's such a great thing, I think, to do.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the year, the first trip that we took, I remember just it really created a lot of bonds between the friends that I have now who are we're such great friends. And I just think that all started just from discovering these new places and staying in the hotels together. And that was a really great experience. And for me, I really enjoyed the traveling that I've done with my host family, actually, because during the Tucson vacation, we traveled down to Bordeaux, and we just took like a 10-hour car trip, which was long with all my host siblings, but it was so nice. And it's really nice because my host family is very active, and they love visiting different places and seeing different things, it was just so nice for me because we were exploring all these new places, and we were just along the vineyards in Bordeaux, and you could just see like chateaus scattered across the vineyards, and it's just so amazing to me. It's such a great experience. And yeah, I'm also really looking forward to Paris in 2 weeks, I think. So it's going to be great. And yeah.
Great. So in a few minutes, I'm going to turn it over to our viewers. So if you haven't done so already, feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and then we'll get to those in a few minutes. So even though you guys have only been there for, well, it's a little over a semester now, what do you think, what is kind of the biggest lesson you've learned so far from studying abroad in France, or like what is the biggest takeaway from being there?
I think it was they actually prepared us for this a lot before coming, because I guess culture shock is a real thing when you go from one thing that you're so used to another thing that's so different, even if you expect it to be so similar. So it's been really interesting and great for me to get out of the United States and see that even though I might think of other places as being essentially the same culturally, it's actually so different and so great in so many ways, even if it's not exactly a culture that you would love. it's still such a great experience to get out of what you know and experience other things and become culturally aware and just have that experience of knowing what everything else in the world is like. Well, not everything else, but a lot of other things, and seeing everything else that's out there.
Yeah, for me, I think that I've gained a lot of confidence just because being with a host family, I realized the only way that I'm going to improve with my language and even just getting used to the culture is putting myself out there and talking to them as much as possible and coming downstairs and playing with my host sisters. And I just think I've learned a lot of things just about that the best way to get better is by trying just putting yourself out.
Great. And my last question is, if you had a piece of advice to a student who is considering SYA, what would it be?
Definitely try to be as open and as outgoing as possible with your host family. Because for me, when I first got here, I was so worried about making mistakes and having them notice that I had different things that I do in my life and just act differently. But then once I kind of realized that they understand that, they expect me to be different. They expect that I won't understand everything they say or be able to speak perfectly when I first get it. I was able to put myself out there, like Kate was just saying, and have so much more confidence in myself. And so once I was able to do that and really open up to my host family, it's the whole experience has changed for me. And I just getting closer with them has been amazing. And even if they are not the main reason you're coming here isn't for a host family, they help your experience so much, whether you realize it or not, because they're probably the main way that you learn the language. They're the main way that you learn the culture and everything like that. So it's definitely very important to at least try to be close with your host family. And if you do have the option to switch host families after you've been here for a little while if things aren't working out. And so I personally stayed with my host family because I think it was a perfect fit. But I know other people who were not completely content at first, but once they changed host families, the whole thing has changed for them, and they've been so much happier, and everything's come together. And so yeah, I think that the main thing to do is just try to be yourself, not hold back. Don't be ashamed of anything, any of your differences or anything like that. Just really put yourself out there and try to get the most of the year, because that's really what you have to do.
For me, it was just before this year began, I was so worried about everything, and my visa came the day before, and I was just stressed that I wouldn't be able to do well in my classes because they were in a different language. But I wish someone had told me this beforehand, that everything is going to be perfectly fine. I think that Jean-Philot, who's our host family advisor, I guess, she matched me, and I know a ton of other people with the best host family possible for them, and seeing everyone in such a great fit it's just amazing to me that everything has really worked out, at least for me, so well. I'm just so grateful. Yeah.
Great. So here's a question. How easy or hard is it to make friends at SYA? And I know a lot of kids are really worried about, finding their people. Can you tell us about how that happened for you guys, how you guys made friends?
Yeah, so there's so many different types of people here because they come from all over the US. And this year we even have one girl from Mexico and one girl from Kenya. So it's really a diverse population. And so there's everyone's guaranteed to find at least one or two people that they can be so close with. And also everyone here is because there is a tough application process. So everyone that's selected is going to be a great person and really excited about this experience. And so it isn't hard to get along with the people here. even if they're not exactly the type of people that you're friends with at your home school or in your hometown, it's if you really put in an effort to try and get to know people and just be open to new experiences, like this whole year is really about, at least for me, then you're guaranteed to find somebody that you'll have a great relationship with. And also, since you're all going through the same experience of being in a different country and not understanding everything, everybody kind of comes together, and nobody wants to make people feel bad because they understand what that would feel like for them. So everyone's really supportive of each other, and it's just a great community, I think.
Yeah, like as I was saying, everyone's kind of in the same boat here, and no one closes themselves off, which is really nice. And even at the airport, I remember everyone was so friendly, and they were already like running up to hug me, even though I had only met them on like social media or something. And everyone was just, it was just so like it was such a nice feeling for me that everyone is just so friendly here, and there's no one that like already made me feel intimidated or anything. I think everyone here is really happy with their friends, and I know that you guys.
Well, great. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I know it's late there for you on a Friday night. And if there isn't any more questions, we're going to start wrapping this up. So Avery, do you want to talk about the application deadline and the financial aid deadline coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So our deadline for finishing your application, which means your essay, all your teacher recommendations, that's going to be February 8th. And our financial aid deadline is February 15th. And as always, if you or your parents have any questions about financial aid or the application process, please reach out to us. We're always available to answer.
Yeah, and we just want to give a quick shout out to those who have already applied. You guys just did the hardest thing. So good job for you guys, and hang in there. And like Avery said, if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.
And I actually do see a question from one of our viewers just popped up. So one of our viewers wants to know from you guys, what are some of the biggest challenges you might face in class, sort of, so really academically, what are some of the biggest challenges you might face?
It's definitely a tough crowd academically because everyone's so strong in all their classes. And so I think that's just been really tough because it is competitive, but at the same time, there's no need to stress about that, because that's another thing that I would add to as advice is don't be worried about the French level, because I know before I had come the summer right before, I was so stressed that everyone was going to be fluent in French already and I was going to be so behind, but it's totally not like that. There are kids that show up and know a lot of French already, but there are also people that have only studied it for 2 years or so, and but it's really about what you put in. So all the classes are mixed with your levels, and so don't be stressed about that at all. It's nothing to worry about. And for the academics, I also think that the teachers understand that we're here a lot more for the experience than for the academics, because most people come from really strong schools in the US. And so it's really, they understand that. So they don't want to overload you with work or weigh you down and make you feel like you can't spend any time with your host family because you have to work on a project or something. So it's been really great, and everyone's just been really supportive academically as well as culturally and with the language and all of that. So it is still a challenge, and I definitely feel like I'm still getting a good education, but I don't feel like the academics are overpowering me and taking away from my experience here in Rennes.
Yeah, for me, I'm one of the people who's only taken French for 2 years, and I think just getting back like my first paper that I wrote in French class and seeing all these little red marks, and it's just stressful for me to take in, but already just the red marks go away as the year goes on, and it was just cool to see all these marks, and like just as a beginner of the language sort of, but it just gets so much better as the year goes on, and all the teachers know that it's not necessary for you to already get perfect grades and everything and your essays to be perfect at the beginning of the year. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. And I see another Viewer asked a question. This one might be more for you, Mina. This viewer wants to know how students are sort of prepared culturally, like if there's any sort of training or orientation to help them prepare for living with host families or living in France, and when that would take place.
Right. So yes, we do start the year as soon as the students arrive the first Monday by having a week of orientation, and that's led by the faculty, myself, Jeanne Frollo that Kate mentioned earlier, who's our host family coordinator, and we sort of give them the keys, or at least the essential keys, to sort of surviving the first weeks in the host family's houses. So we spent that amount of time in the beginning, and then it follows with classes during the first 2 weeks being really about being in Bretagne, being in Rennes, sort of knowing the geography, understanding where they live, and then it's followed up by our first trip that we actually call the orientation trip. And we continue on that, and then after that time, things sort of ease in and things become natural, and we come back and do special assemblies a good amount of time during the first trimester, coming back and sort of talking to them, listening to the questions, trying to answer that. There are individual appointments with the host family coordinator if they have specific questions about things at home. So we really emphasize on that in the very beginning when it's crucial, because they already, as they explained, going through this linguistic gymnastic in their heads. They're exhausted at the end of the day. And then they arrive home and there's more French. But that's when they also progress the most. As they said, they spend the first round of vacation, the first 2 weeks of vacation in Rennes. There's no travel other than the school travel, so that they really immerse themselves and come back in November and things sort of become normal. Everything is normal. They come back to their classes. They have gotten that rhythm. They know their host families really well. They know how the teachers teach. So we're sort of done with it. And then, of course, if there are questions throughout the year, there are appointments made with them. And we sort of, on specific occasions, talk to them about culture, around Thanksgiving, for instance, around winter break. So there are other times in the year we'll come back to that. But the main part of it is in the beginning. And if I could add something, I think they don't know that yet because it's still January, but I think the reorientation back in the US is the hardest one, because I hear from students when they go back home and they email me during the summer and they said this was much harder. Going back home was harder to actually adapt in France because we're not there. I mean, they're going back home, we assume that it's home, but getting back home sometimes is harder than actually arriving here. Because when they arrive here, they know there'll be challenges and there's a support system. When they go back home, sometimes it's just hard for them to reintegrate their old life. It's been 9 months being abroad, so we'll talk to them at the end. We said that this year we'll try to do sort of a reorientation for them and prepare them to go back home. But that's sort of how things go throughout the year.
Thanks so much, Mina. And at this point, I think we should probably let you guys go since it's late there. And I know there are a couple other questions out there, but Avery here can get back to you. If we have your email address, then we'll be able to send you guys a response. So Avery, you just want to go over the deadlines one last time for everybody.
Yes, absolutely. So February 8th for our application and the February 15th for our financial aid application.
So thanks so much for joining us. If you haven't done so, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Vimeo, YouTube, you name it, we're on it. And if you guys want to just wave for our French guests, you want to just wave and say goodbye to everybody. Thank you again so much for joining us.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Merci, bonne soirée, bonne journée.
All right, good night, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, bye, thanks.
Bye-bye.